Oh, hey there, Game of Thrones is great. I know every basic bitch is these days, but I would consider myself a huge fan. And season 7 isn't even a bad season. It's still a fantastic piece of cinema and totally worth watching. It's just not as good as the other ones, the ones that were before it, though. And that is not because of the cinematography, or the acting, or the set design, or the special effects, or the costumes, or the environments, or the score, or the scope, or the polish. Like, that's all great. That's perfect. It's mostly, or more entirely, just the writing. I mean, you can argue all you want about the importance of other elements, but when it comes to film, I consider writing to be like the sails on a ship. It doesn't matter how good the rest of the boat is, if it hasn't got sails, it's not going anywhere fast. It's just not a very good boat, is it? And it's just not a very good boat, is it though? So this is my tentatively titled video. Game of Thrones Season 7 is not as good as everyone would have you believe. It's still a pretty good season, and don't hate me, but there are some glaring problems with it that make it much not as good as the previous one. And I understand that the writers don't have as long to write this as George R.R. Martin does to write the books, and in any series, transitioning from a different writer is gonna, change some things. And don't say they've not transitioned from writers, because they have, because a previous main writer of the show was technically George R.R. Martin himself with the books, but he's not part of it. It's just the D&D boys, and okay, scrap that title. This is why Game of Thrones Season 7 was disappointing. Okay, so Season 7 isn't necessarily badly written, it's just not as well written as all the seasons prior. Including Season 5. This isn't for any deviation from the book expectations, which was what got Season 5 a lot of slack. This isn't anything to do with the books. At this point, the show is its own thing, and considering that I haven't read the damn bricks, I'm focusing on the show and the show alone. It's pretty rare that you get something that's popular, successful, and worthy of such praise. Kind of like Dany. A good show should not only be, worthy of ruling, but it should have the chance to rule, the opportunity. I can list a ton of shows with undeserved popularity or undeserved obscurity, but only a small few that are both popular and really good. Game of Thrones was, and maybe still is, one of them. It didn't receive high praise for its action or its flash and its fan service because it didn't have any of that at the start. It got it all because it was like nothing we'd ever seen on television. A drama as tightly scripted as Breaking Bad, in which all actions have consequences, and it's always throwing these new twists at you and keeping you right on the edge of your little seat right there with your little butt right in the seat there. But it's set in a world of epic fantasy. Breaking Bad was previously my favourite show, as unoriginal as that is, and then I started watching Game of Thrones, and I realised it was everything I loved about AMC's Meth Daddy, but with dragons. Not only did it delight my skeptical mind, it made my inner nerd happier than Simon Pegg in a fat suit. This season kind of failed to do that almost completely. I think a lot of people have suddenly realised that it's not the epic fantasy or the battles of the dragons that we love. It is, and always has been, the intelligence of the scripting. I can roughly break the reasons everyone loved this show down into 3 categories, which is why this video is so long. But stick with it, because I actually have some good points, trust me. So the first aspect that I think made Game of Thrones super great is the realism in the world of the show. Title card. What I mean by this is that characters never did something for the sake of plot. They were complicated, conflicted, and all of their decisions seemed to make sense. They were clearly communicated to the audience, the thought process, the reasons they chose to do what they did, and not with exposition, but with incredible performances. Prominent examples include Alfie Allen and his stunning portrayal of Theon Greyjoy's decision to betray the Starks. There's also Ian Glenn's totally non-verbal communication of Jorah's arc in Season 1, from spy to devoted servant of Queen Daenerys. We see and learn so much about these characters, not because someone's telling us something, or because they're having a conversation with Tyrion, or because of the convenience of the plot. We learn these things because we're shown them. Like they're people, like they're real people, That's realism in the world of the show. I know there's dragons in it, and it's only the fact that we kind of have this suspension of disbelief that these people could be real, and that we can follow clearly the thought processes they go through, and regardless of what it is, if you want the audience to be invested in a character and their decision making, They need to make believable decisions. It doesn't mean that everything they do has to be in line with what the audience thinks they should do. The audience just has to understand why they made this decision and where they're coming from. We also have Jon's decision to stay at his post at Castle Black, or Dany's decision to remain in Meereen. I have no doubt that audience members everywhere were screaming at them to leave, for Dany to take Westeros, for Jon to go fight alongside Robb. But it's not about what the audience wants. It's about what the characters want. The characters are having what they want taken away from them. It's not about the audience. Like, as silly as this sounds, it's almost like the importance of not spoiling a child. If you keep giving the audience what they want time and time again, they're going to grow tired of it, like an addiction. Not every audience member of this show is as predictable and hyperbolic as the people who go to the Burlington Bar. Yes, I went there. They are cheering too much. Having Jon stay at Castle Black means that fans are disappointed. I remember watching with my family and having my mum tell Sam to fuck off when he came to get Jon to return. However, though this may be frustrating, it helps us to understand Jon's character. It makes us respect him and care for him more. It's unfair. He can't get what he wants, just like we as an audience can't get what we want. So therefore we have this kind of connection to him and this strong empathy. We have this sense of respect. We're not just watching Jon anymore, we are feeling the weight of his decisions ourselves as we watch. Let's compare this to Season 7. Dany doesn't want to use her dragons, or more, Tyrion doesn't want her to. This is one of the central conflicts of the season, and it doesn't make any sense. She doesn't want to kill a bunch of people, so instead she's sending out Unsullied and Dothraki screamers to kill a bunch of people. So that's better than what? Burning a bit of the Red Keep? Yo, listen up, Dany, you're not making any sense. Let me give you a little explanation here. You could easily fly up to Cersei. You could ask everyone who isn't against her to get out of the castle and bend the knee and live. You know, the people that don't, who cares? You're going to burn them anyway, and most of them will because the public doesn't like Cersei. Any innocents in the surrounding area would definitely listen to you, and if Cersei doesn't, Cersei gets toasted. Is anyone seriously going to hate Dany for burning Cersei Lannister? Are they going to compare her to her father, who burned innocent people, for burning Cersei Lannister? She just killed
a queen whose people despise her.
And she killed less people than Cersei.
Fewer. What?
And she killed fewer people than Cersei did when she blew up the Sept of fucking Baelor. The argument is that they don't want to risk Dany, or they don't want her to burn people with her dragons because that's worse than normal war and the bunch of crazy rapists on horses for some reason. But then she does it anyway. So the audience has finally bought into this idea that burning dragons with people... Burning dragons with people. So the audience has finally bought into this incredibly uncharacteristically black and white definition of evil, which is that burning dragons is evil and not burning dragons isn't evil. And then Dany goes and burns a bunch of people with her dragons. And we're supposed to feel conflicted? But the whole point of the season is that burning dragons is evil. Or something. I don't fucking remember. Okay, so look, what I'm trying to say here is that the loot train attack was fantastic. Like, it's a highlight of the season. In of itself, it's just a beautiful piece of anti-war cinema, as so many of the other great battles in Game of Thrones have been. But in the context of the show at this point, despite its flawless execution, it doesn't make any sense. The show is trying to give us this duality, this grey, you know? Having good on both sides and evil on both sides, but like 2 episodes later, it goes back to having us think that Dany is the perfect ruler, this special super good girl. And then we have Jon bending the knee at the end, because she's great. She didn't have any consequences for what she did. She just gets away with it though, because she's the good guy, and we don't have time for Dany to be conflicted, because... What I'm saying is that ultimately having her motivations be so unclear for so long and having the logic behind them never fully addressed is just bad writing. I know it's happening because it would be more anticlimactic to some if Dany just won it all in one episode, but more can happen. It's what makes sense. I would rather the show kept its realism by having characters make decisions that make sense instead of introducing conflict because TV show. I'm actually very curious as to what happens after Dany wins the throne. It's not like that would be uneventful. The story could continue in so many ways, and yet it just chooses not to. It chooses to just dilly-dally around for a season. I know it was only 7 episodes, but it doesn't feel like a lot happened this season. Even though a lot happened, like, as a fact, a lot happened, but it doesn't feel like that. It doesn't feel like the characters have grown or changed as we've seen them grow in previous seasons. I mean, half of this damn season is just reasons to not use the dragons because TV show and because it would resolve things too quickly. And yet we're shown time and time again how effective the dragons are, and we're never shown any of the negative consequences for using the dragons. Like, at all. Like, Dany burns some people and then everyone's just fine with her. And then I know Tyrion's getting annoyed, but it doesn't matter because Jono loves her and they have a sex scene. And one of her dragons dies, I guess. That's more because of her own stupidity, because of Jono not getting on the dragon when he had the chance to. Okay, look, I'm going to talk about Jon's expedition beyond the wall in the penultimate episode, Beyond the Wall. This episode was the turning point for a lot of people, and it's definitely one of the worst episodes they've ever done. I know I'm probably going to make a lot of people mad now, because a lot of people probably really liked this episode, probably thought it was one of the best ones. I hated this episode. I thought it was really bad and boring and not good. Okay, so they don't want to risk Dany because she might get killed. That's fair, but, like, could we discuss this? Could we tell the audience that this is why they don't want to use Dany? We only really work this out when the Fellowship of Fan Favourites are already neck deep in their mission, and by then the audience has already been screaming at themselves, why are you doing this mission? Why don't you just take a dragon? Why don't you just take a dragon? I understand the logic. They don't want Dany to get killed, because a lot rests on her. I understand the logic, but nobody mentioned it. No one goes, hey, why don't we use the dragons? And then have Tyrion go, we can't risk Dany. That would have taken 2 lines, and it would have made everything so much less confusing. Like, it feels like everything's being cut for time, and I don't understand why. Why couldn't they have just made the show longer? They have the budget for it. What are they trying to achieve here? Okay, doesn't matter. Other flaws in this mission include nobody asking if the white will even stay animated, nobody acknowledging the fact that it's crazy, stupid, dangerous, and like, again, just burn the Red Keep and you wouldn't even have to do any of this. It's seriously. Dany, come on. Dany, I thought you were a smart girl. What are you doing, babe? Hun, do you want to talk about it? Why'd they bring Gendry? Like, that's what I want to know. I want to know why they brought Gendry, because I don't think it made any sense for them to bring Gendry. If you follow? I don't know if you follow. Getting back on topic, why did they do this mission? Honestly, because TV show. Because it's really super cool, and all of our favourite characters get to go and fight zombies. It wasn't earned. And why did they bring Gendry? Why would they immediately trust the Hound and Thoros and Bendrick Dondarrion, especially after them all being in a cell when they arrived? You know, because that's what the audience wants. We're just spoiling the audience. We're giving them their candy. Again.
Eat it, you fat fucks.
I'm going to talk about this more in a later point, but it's making the show less investing. Every single time we get, like, exactly what we want, it makes the show more predictable and less tense. Because as the great philosophy Dr. House MD once said,
as the philosopher Jagger once said, you can't always get what you want.
And I've talked about it before, but finally, at the end of this penultimate episode, Jon bends the knee. It's basically force-fed to us that he's been convinced of Dany's super goodness, very special Supergirl qualities, and, you know, that she's a ruler worthy of the name. I mean, why? What exactly has she done since the last time? She demanded that Jon bend the knee rather than work with him because her pride is apparently more important, and then she did what Tyrion told her not to do by burning a father and son alive. Kind of the same way that, you know, Jon even mentioned that he had family members that were burned alive by Dany's father. I mean, surely that's a bad omen, right? All I can really focus on is that she saved everyone from a bunch of zombies with her special magic dragons. Okay, so Jon already knew she had dragons. Jon already knew that she was kind of on their side with the whole thing, and Jon already knew that a dragon would be capable of burning a fuckload of White Walkers. So what changed? Why is this change entirely verbal? We don't see any of Jon's kind of reasoning or, like, second guessing. He's just against the idea, and then it's brought up again, and he's like, no, you're my queen now. What did she do, Jon? What did she do? Again, we can compare this to Jorah's change of allegiance, one that we see entirely in the performance and the context of the show. You know, what Jorah has seen Dany do. Jon has no real reason to suddenly trust her, but he does because TV show. I mean, maybe he decided to do it for the good of the realm, maybe he doesn't really trust her, maybe he was just following Tormund's advice, you remember?
The king beyond the wall never bent the knee. How many of his people died for his pride?
No, but that can't be true because in the next episode he almost costs everyone in Westeros their non-zombie lives in order to make a stand against lying? So he must be for real. If he wasn't, then why does he have sex with her? Why is this romance between the two so force-fed, and why does Tyrion stand in the hallway like a creeper? I mean, seriously, where the fuck did this come from? Is he jealous of what? Is he against the alliance? Why? Is he concerned for Dany? For what reason? Dany is making a strong ally with a strong house. I know she's not really, but like in Tyrion's eyes, it's not incest, it's a Targaryen and a Stark. They said earlier in the season that the best years of Westeros were when the Stark and Targaryens were working together. Tyrion should be happy about this. He even said, like him being creepy and jealous is revealed to us as if we're meant to go, but I'm just here going, what? Why? Now here's the thing, this show has given us unclear actions before, characters we're supposed to feel confused about, but all that is coming from a time when the show had trained us to be very observant, because most character arcs and changes were subtle. In the current series, things are much more spelled out, and that's probably the showrunner's tactic of keeping the huge audience they've gained, which I don't blame them for, but it does mean that we as an audience aren't as focused, you know? We're expecting things to be clearer than they are. We're not expecting to have to think as hard because a lot of things are just getting spelled out. So when a character does something like this, without it being very clearly hinted at prior, like I'm sure you could go back through and go, ooh, here's why Tyrion's jealous and here's this little subtle eye twitch he did. Like, okay, but that's not the tone that the show has been going for lately. It catches the audience off guard and confuses them. Tyrion's spooky creeper moment was just out of character. He went from point A straight to point B in his character development with no hints of it in between. It was a twist that wasn't earned, a consequence without an action that led to it. Which is going to be what part 2 of this video is about.
Not about my queen.
Thank you for watching to the end. If I haven't managed to make your blood boil with rage or irritation for bad talking Game of Thrones, please either continue to the second part of this video or subscribe to know when it's coming. I hope you enjoyed, and if you're a big fan of fantasy like me, maybe consider checking out my D&D podcast I do with my closest pals. It's serialized with multiple stories and a lot of fun. Either way, have a great weekend.